I am just going to say to everybody out there, it has been almost 3 years, about 2.5 years, and I've been bringing tremendous guests on. And all I need people out there to like and subscribe. Let's make it like a gentleman's agreement. Larry is now a personal friend. He's been on plenty of times. Now I bring you the great Myron Sugarman. Now we have Larry's beautiful wife with us, Kelly. And all I'm asking the people out there to do is hit that subscribe button and the like button, and then make a comment if you'd like. That's it. That's all I want. So again, Larry, I'm sorry. Continue.
No, listen. You started this show as great as always. You're a great host, and people should start watching more. They should start liking it and subscribing, whatever they need to do to keep you on, because you're straightforward and everything you do is great. And you got a great guest tonight, Myron Sugarman. I call him Uncle Myron. His friend, his real nephew Kenny, is a dear friend of mine, and we're like brothers now. So it makes Myron my uncle. But you can tap into incredible history with this man. And I'm not going to give anything else away. Just have a great show with him. You got an incredible guest.
All right. So we have a great guest, Mr. Myron Sugarman, and he has been on Valuetainment with one of my that's actually my absolute favorite podcast, Valuetainment with Patrick Bet-David. He's been on with Larry David, who is a personal friend of mine, on Plex TV, on Mafia TV. And now I have the pleasure of interviewing him. And you did a little bit of time, and then prison time. And then when you came out, you wrote this tremendous book about your life and the history of the Jewish Mafia and the Italian Mafia. What I wanted to kind of tap into at first was, where are you from and how you got yourself into the underworld, organized crime, so on and so forth.
Oh, so John, I'm from Newark.
Okay.
We're a Newark, New Jersey family. My father was Newark, New Jersey.
Okay.
And my father was closely related to the Jewish bosses. Mm-hmm. Then eventually to the boss of the Genovese crime family, who was the partner with my father and Abe Green in a business called Runyon Sales Company, which dealt in jukeboxes, vending, amusements, gaming, and so forth. They went on to go ahead and manufacture. They bought the Valley Manufacturing Company. Mm-hmm. But so I'm second generation, and I really know my history because I was born into it. So
now, when you say, I apologize, when you say the boss of the Genovese crime family, are you speaking about Vito Genovese himself, or the Chin, or Fat Tony?
Very interesting. Your questions are good. Did you ever hear of Jerry Catena?
Well, he was in Jersey, right?
Jerry, but he was the boss.
Right.
After Genovese, they split the leadership between Jerry Catena and Tommy Ryan Eberly.
Okay.
Jerry Catena was Jersey. Tommy Eberly took New York.
Okay.
Tommy Eberly was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the best way to describe it is that Jerry Catena was an unwilling choice, an unwilling. He was not willing. I want to think of the right word. He was reticent. He was hesitant. He didn't want to accept the leadership, but he was that spectacular. He was that beyond words, and he was probably the most understated boss of any crew that ever existed. Okay. And I'll explain that. I can go further as to why I say what he did. He was a combination of a mob boss and a brilliant businessman and remarkable human contacts.
Okay.
Meyer Lansky, of course, was the boss of the Jews, together with Abner Longies Willman. Abner Longies Willman, together with Joe Doc Stature, were the bosses of Jersey. Mm-hmm. Waxed very wealthy during the period of Prohibition. Abner Longies Willman was known as the Al Capone of Jersey.
Okay.
since the alcohol, much of the alcohol that came into the United States came in through the ports of Newark and Perth Amboy and the East Coast.
Okay.
And he held sway over that, together with Doc Statcher. Meyer Lansky, of course, was together with Benny Siegel, and he received the scepter of power of the Jews. He learned it from somebody by the name of Arnold Rothstein, who was known as the Brain. And he was the original New York bootlegger, the boss of not only the Jews. I would say that he was the mentor of both the Jews and the Italians.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold Rothstein was known to have fixed the 1919 Chicago Black Sox scandal, the World Series.
Shoeless Joe Jackson.
And that's right. And so Arnold Rothstein passed on all of his knowledge and his wisdom to Meyer and to Lucky Luciano. And the history, of course, is that together, Lucky Luciano, who saw that cooperation surpassed competition, understood that in order for the emergence of the modern mob, there was a need to get rid of the two old mustache Petes, Joe the Boss Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano.
Mm-hmm.
1 second, something.
Go right ahead.
Okay, let me just. So Salvatore, they did get rid of them. Bugsy Siegel participated in the killing of both Joe the Boss Masseria, and there were 4 Jews that were picked by Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky to get rid of Salvatore Maranzano. Mm. So upon the elimination of the old mustache Petes, there was the formation of the modern mob. And I think that's basically the history in brief as to the cooperation between Jews and Italians. Lucky Luciano did not suffer the xenophobia of the old bosses, who were so xenophobic that if you didn't come from Castelmamare in Sicily, you were subject to suspicion. The closer that you came, first of all, you had to come from Sicily, not even from Napoli, not from Apulia, not from Calabria, not from Bari. You had to come from Sicily. Mm. And the closer that you came from that little village of Castelmamare, where these two came from, you could be more, I don't want to say that you were more trusted. I think that you were less subject to suspicion because of course, in that world, you live by paranoia.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Now, so I love the history.
Get back to Jerry Catena. Jerry Catena was tutored, and he was the bridge in Newark between the Jews and the Italians, between Abnologi's woman, Doc Statcher, and between the Italian boss, who at that time was somebody by the name of Richie the Boot, Boiardo, major bootlegger. And there was hostility, major hostility between the Longhi and the Boot, and the Longhi commissioned the hit team to go kill the Boot. The Boot reciprocated, they both survived. Ultimately, the story was that Al Capone came from Chicago, or sent in a delegate or representative, I think his brother, to make a peace agreement between the Jews and the Italians. This was 1930-31. And it was the feature article, front page of the Newark Star Ledger, that peace was agreed upon between the Longhi and between the Boot. So that's the history. Jerry Catena surfaces. Now, the reason I tell you, John, that he was exceptional is he had remarkable contacts. He had great relationship with Meyer Lansky. He had a great relationship with Abner Longies Wellman. He had a great relationship, of course, with all the Italians. He was Vito Genovese's consigliere, and he was an unwilling boss. He didn't really want the limelight. But in 1963, our family was distributors for Bally Gaming at that time, not the slot machine. This was after the war, post-World War II. Runyon Sales Company, which was my father, Abe Green, and Jerry Catena. They had the distribution rights for Bally product pinball machines for New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
So the manager of the company was a fellow by the name of Bill O'Donnell. And the company went into foreclosure after 1962-63 because their main product, which was a subterfuge pinball gambling device called the Bally Bingo machine, was banned for interstate shipment by Robert Kennedy, who at that time was the new United States Attorney General under his brother's administration. Well, he went after the mob. And one of the main sources of income for the mob was the Bally machine, which was found in every saloon, every beer garden, every gin mill, every truck stop, every luncheonette, every candy store throughout the United States. People don't know about the machine anymore because that was banned in 1962-63. And eventually it was replaced by more modern technology. If you tried to reintroduce a Bally Bingo machine today, people wouldn't play it because the mindset doesn't. They're used to a completely different technology than what was the Bally Bingo machine. However, it was an incredible gambling device that was instantly accepted all over the world. I exported thousands of those machines from one end of the earth to the other. That's how I started out in my youth when I was 21 years of age.
And you were working for your father at the time?
I went to work for my father in 1959 upon graduation from college. I studied political science and foreign languages. And but in my DNA and my genetics were gambling machines and jukeboxes and pinball machines and travel and doing business overseas and the adventure of it and so forth. And 1970, after my father passed away, Meyer Lansky's organization, which included some heavy hitters like Dino Cellini, they shipped me off to Lagos, Nigeria. They had made a joint venture operation with a couple of Arab gangsters from Beirut by the name of Mohammed Fawaz and Yusuf Haider. And they needed a manager to run a Bally slot machine operation in Lagos, Nigeria. This was 6 months after the Biafran War, Civil War. So I went there as a kid. I was 30, 31, 32 years of age. I met Meyer Lansky and Doc Stature in Israel before I left. And that's, by the way, how I found out that after the death of Longies Woolman and the departure of Meyer Lansky from the United States to Israel to escape an indictment for income tax evasion, that's when I learned that Jerry Catena actually emerged as the boss of the Jews, even though he was Neapolitan. But he had the respect was given to the Jews, even though there was declining power as long as Longies Woolman was alive, and as long as Meyer Lansky was alive. Now, this was nothing on a personal level, but this is the way Cosa Nostra operates. Out of sight, out of mind. The same thing with Lucky Luciano. When the deal was made with Thomas Dewey, who became the governor of New York, notwithstanding the fact that as a prosecutor, of New York, he prosecuted Lucky Luciano on frame-up charges of promoting prostitution. And he was incarcerated and given a 30 to 50-year sentence. But he cooperated with the Department of Navy during World War II to protect against sabotage and espionage by sending orders to the dock, to the longshoremen, to keep their eyes and ears open during the war to protect against sabotage and espionage by Nazi war criminals, spies.
Okay.
There's a fascinating book called Operation Underworld. It was written by a fellow by the name of Campbell, I believe, and it tells the story of that particular part of history. Lucky Luciano, a deal was worked out by Meyer Lansky through his attorney, Moses Polikoff. Moses Polikoff was the attorney for the mob. And he made a deal with Thomas Dewey that the mob would throw its support behind Thomas Dewey to become governor of the state of New York, which was a stepping stone for Dewey's aspirations to become president of the United States, on the condition that he would grant Lucky Luciano a governor's pardon. And he did, on the condition that he would not remain in the United States. He was sent back to Sicily.
Okay.
When he went back to Sicily, John, he was no longer Lucky Luciano, the boss.
Right.
His power was transferred to Frank Costello.
Okay. All right. Right. Yeah. The Genovese crime family seems to have always been the family that kind of held that silent, and we work under the radar throughout the years. Because for many years, Frank Costello had retired after being killed. Then Vito Genovese, and then it was the Chin, and the Chin was really low key. He used to have street bosses, but run everything from his mother's apartment, really, and nobody knew that he was the real boss. And you wouldn't be able to talk about him or speak about him. You had to point to your chin, so on and so forth. And when your father was partners with Jerry Catena, during that changing of power in the Genovese crime family from Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Vito Genovese, was there any turmoil or pressure or problems between your dad and Jerry Catena?
No, my father revered him.
Okay. And when he was partners, what kind of businesses were they in together?
Well, they were in the jukebox and gaming and cigarette machine business.
Okay.
When he died in 1959, Jerry Catena negotiated with the widow. These were top of the line people, John.
Okay.
The respect there was always impeccable behavior and conduct. I never witnessed the slightest sign of disrespect. In fact, when you were around those people, particularly as a kid, you learn through the process of emotional osmosis how to behave yourself, so that you don't overstep your boundaries or do something which you would make yourself look foolish. As far as Mr. Catena was concerned, one of my very close friends and a friend of Larry's, a fellow by the name of Steve, he says Jerry Catena, his father was very close to Jerry Catena. That was a iron fist in a silk glove. He ran as my father, may rest in peace, used to say, Mr. Catena could have been the head of the Pentagon or the chairman of the board of General Electric. He was a brilliant administrator. He was a master he knew how to administrate men. He told me in September 13th, 1991, at a party in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for Al Maniaci's wife, for her 70th birthday. God bless their memory. He said to me, I was just another chief operating officer of another large corporation.
That's certainly one way you could look at it. Absolutely. So now your dad and Catena are partners. They make a ton of money, and you start working for your dad. Do you
So
start?
when I came out of school, there
Mhm.
was it was 14 years after the end of World War II.
Okay.
So there was an emergence of an economy in Europe, and they were looking for jukeboxes, for pinball machines, for bally bingo machines. I traveled the world,
Mhm.
and I sold product. And my father died in 1964. My mother sold out in 66. And then I went on my own.
Okay.
But I was always, of course, part of that world. So when they made a bally slot machine operation with these two gangsters from Peru, they needed a manager. At that time, I was 32 years of age. And they gave me the assignment. And I went to Lagos, Nigeria, and it was quite an experience. I lived with Arabs, with the
Wow.
Arabs Lebanon, and learned the slot machine business.
Mhm.
It was a unique experience. See, they took over the Valley slot machine business. That was a deal that Mr. Catena put together in 3 hours by picking up the telephone and calling some very wealthy Jews around the country. That's what I was trying to explain to you. Had the connections. Ballet manufacturing. Mickey Wyszynski was from Las Vegas. He belonged to Jerry Catena. He came up with the hopper system. He found somebody that manufactured a system that would transform and revolutionize the slot machine business from simple mechanical payout of no more than 20 coins jackpot, where suddenly now electromechanical, these machines would kick out thousands of coins, and eventually on credit that you call the attendant and so forth. So it revolutionized the slot machine business. Now, to get the machine business, the Valley slot machine exposure, Mr. Catena, again, remarkable connections, picked up the telephone, sent a message to Vegas for Dean Martin to receive Mr. Abe Green, who was my father's partner, who was a very, very special, unique individual. Tough, but again, you know, not a mug, not a thug.
Right.
Mr. Catena, Abe Green, my father, suits, ties, shoes, hat, coat, self-educated. These fellas didn't sit around and make silly conversation. Jerry Catena was reading 4 newspapers a day. Had it spread out on his desk. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Christian Science Monitor, Manchester Guardian. And he had connections. So he knew what was going on as far as the economy is concerned. He used to come to my office and say, Myron, do me a favor. I need you to check out these statistics, Chamber of Commerce. The concept of course, when there was a problem, he knew exactly who to pick in order to resolve certain problems for economics, problems for politics, problems for diplomacy, and all other problems that you can well understand, because after all, he is, as he explained, he was the chief operating officer of a very large corporation.
Right.
He didn't function any differently than the government of the United States of America. It was
So
a
when
microcosmic.
Right. So when you say slot machines, when you were doing business abroad, was it similar to here, where you just kind of saw a machine in the back of a bodega, a store, a candy store, or was it different over there?
It depended. It depended. Each country, of course, was quite different. In England, in 1959, Her Majesty's government changed the laws to allow slot machines operating in pubs legitimately. But they changed the gaming laws, and before the Valley slot machine was manufactured, there were mechanical devices, and of course, Mr. Catena had Mickey Wyszynski in Las Vegas. And Mickey was like a mentor to me. And I had a lot of uncles. I had a lot of teachers. I had great teachers. And he was supplying slot machines, manufacturing, reconditioning, used equipment, and they would ship to England. Jerry Catena made a deal with Tommy Three Finger Brown Lucchese. I'll never forget. He came to Newark, New Jersey, to 221 Frilling Island Avenue. And Newark sat down with Jerry Catena, and they got up a deal to supply slot machines to England. Tommy Lucchese. When I was 21 years of age, I went to England, and I got a phone call from my father, who told me to take a train and go from London to Southampton. And there was going to be a guy by the name of Herbie Katz was going to meet me. Herbie Katz was a gangster from Brooklyn. He was belonged to Tommy Lucchese. And I spent several days with Herbie Katz. He took me around to show me all the pubs. And it was a public relationship, that's all. But it was Tommy, he was Tommy Lucchese's guy. So he was getting the machines and selling the machines in England. And guys were being dispatched from the United States to go to England and pick up out of 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 over a period, machines, the sale of the machines, and bring it back to Mr. Catena.
Okay. So when did you? Okay, sorry. When did you come back to the States?
So I went to Africa. I stayed there for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Then the Arabs bought back the deal, and I came back to the United States. 1971, 70, then 72. I struck it rich. The United States government came down hard on the southern states that still under states' rights permitted the operation of bally bingo machines. At that time, it coincided with a gigantic demand that opened up in Japan for bally bingo machines. So I spent 6 months of my life in 1972 traveling throughout the entire South. I went to Louisiana, I went to Georgia, I went to Tennessee, Virginia, Maryland. I was buying up bally bingo machines, stuffing them in containers, and shipping them to Japan. And that was a score. That was a real score. And then in 1977, New York opened up for pinball machines. I was buying up all the pinball machines throughout the entire world, supplying them to New York and to Canada. And then in 77, summer of 77, we put out the first slot machines in New York. I had originally done some business with Frankie Loke, who was John Gotti's underboss.
Okay. Now, was this all legit at the time, or this was all illegitimate? Nothing was legit.
It took 2 months when we started putting out machines, John, that we were recognized by two major organizations. One was called the FBI, and the other one was called Organized Crime. Okay. They wanted to know who the Jew from Jersey was that were supplying slot machines.
Now, I have to believe that you had partners at the time.
So I was very ecumenical. I shared with everybody. Somebody came, whether it was Cubans, whether it was Italians, whether it was Israelis, whether it was Russians, and so forth. So I put people into business. There's an old expression, John. Greed kills more people than bullets. And I learned a long time ago from the teachers that I had that you want to make everybody your friend. You certainly don't want to make anybody your enemy.
Okay.
So you go out of your way to show people, to teach them, to educate them, help them get into business. Most people appreciated it.
I see. Okay. So yeah, so you made a lot of people a lot
To
of
make
money.
others rich. Tons of money. Tons of money.
And across the board, as far
And
as
it was
ethnicities and
as far as across the board, what, John?
across the board, as far as ethnicities, you kind of worked with them all.
You know, there's no you're colorblind, you know, religious blind, you don't care. Okay. You bond. You bond. I told you I was partners. By the way, I am educated in I'm a very big follower of revisionist Zionist philosophy. So I'm very strong pro-Israel.
Okay.
And yet I lived with Arabs for a year and a half in Nigeria, and I had a remarkable relationship.
Okay.
All of this gets pushed to the side. When you got a common objective, all right, you're going to make money with each other.
That's right.
And you have a common enemy, and that's called the government, because
Mhm.
you're operating outside the limits of law.
Mhm.
So there's rules and regulations, there's customs, there's traditions, and you're all at the same boat at that particular point. Yeah, of course, you recognize I was with a very good guy. My guy was a gentleman by the name of Louis Gatto. They called him Louis Red or Louis Streaky, Louis Streaky for Patterson, New Jersey. He was a Genovese guy.
Mhm.
We had a very perfect relationship.
Okay.
I honored him, and he provided me with a very, very excellent representation.
Okay. Out of all the ethnicities that you worked with, obviously all these guys were illegitimate. Who would you say was the most ruthless? And have you ever seen with your own eyes how ruthless that group could be?
Everybody has the capacity to be ruthless. There's no one group that exceeds another.
Mhm.
Generally, you might have is the new boy in town is a little bit more aggressive, right? Like in the case of the Cubans mob was led by a fellow by the name of Jose Miguel Batle.
Mhm.
Jose Miguel Batle was a hero in the Bay of Pigs. It's a fantastic story. He was released on an exchange deal that was arranged through the United States with Castro. Came back to the United States. He was a CIA guy, right? The operation, the operation of the Bay of Pigs, I think they called their unit 4628, or it had a special number. Jose Miguel Batle became the boss of the Cubans. They called themselves La Cooperación.
Okay.
Jose Miguel, he ran a tight ship.
Mhm.
I mean, first of all, he all the Cubans answered to him, and he had an iron fist. And at the same time, he went to work in terms of putting out control of the numbers business in New York and Jersey, and he fought tooth and nail with the Fat Tony until eventually they sat down, the two of them, and they worked out a deal with cooperation. But Jose Miguel, he could have built his own cemetery, filled up enough guys. The Albanians were also ruthless, also tough. The new immigrants in town. Right? In Israel, we think in terms of the United States of America, nice Jewish guys, accountants, doctors, lawyers, professors, scientists. Right. They got some very serious mobs in Israel, all right, that are as ruthless as any on the face of the earth. And they cooperate with the Arab mobs.
Okay, so it's all about basically making money. If you have to compromise, you have to compromise.
That's the common denominator. Very
okay.
Good.
All right. So when did you finally get pinched for the business that you were running throughout the United States and abroad? Because I know you did some prison time.
I had 3 state cases. I had 3 federal cases. And the final case was a federal case, 1994. I pleaded guilty in 1995. We made a plea deal, and I did 19 months Allenwood Federal Prison Camp.
Okay.
And came out November 13th, 1996. And I still had interest overseas. I had interest in Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Puerto Rico, Namibia, Africa, Uganda, England, Spain. So I had some interest overseas, and eventually a lot of most of it diminished, or I sold out. I sold out of Colombia. Brazil, we were closed down by the president of the country. Argentina went to the crapper because it's a country of poorly administrated politics, comparable to Cuba and to Venezuela.
Okay.
So there's no sense operating in places where there's no dollar exchange.
Right. Now, did you ever trying your hand in other illegal businesses?
No,
that was going good, and you just wrote it.
No, it's my specialty was with machines.
Okay.
My machines were machines. I know everybody throughout the world, and everybody knows me.
Okay. I also good. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I also have to believe that I'm sure you've made a ton of money. It has to. I'm sure you've made a ton of money. You've made your partners a ton of money. You seem to live very modestly, though. Was that by design?
Yeah. Intellect and adventure and philosophy and Zionism and the state of Israel and I'm a scholar. I'm a scholar. I don't get any pleasure. I don't play golf. I don't go to a country club. I don't like sitting around making stupid conversation or small talk.
Okay. Right.
Okay, that's of no interest to me. I read a lot. I read a lot.
Okay.
I went to university, and I had a remarkable life. I've been to 70 countries. I speak 1 million languages.
That's amazing.
Understand people's culture, religions, the races. It's anthropology. I mean, it's just everything is so fascinating that life itself. I see as people have a lot more money than I do, and it doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay.
What I have is, and I raised terrific kids.
Okay.
One of my sons is a rabbi who has 8 kids and who is probably one of the greatest scholars of today of Jewish law. So it's
that's probably your greatest accomplishment.
Everybody pursues what their interests are, and I criticize or condemn nobody else.
Okay, but no, when you were making the height of the money, no fancy cars, jewelry, clothes, things like that. You stayed under the radar.
I gave it all away. I was very generous.
Oh, okay, good. Because
I gave a lot of it away to make sure. That's the reason you, as I explained to you from the very beginning, greed only just, greed will kill you faster than bullets.
Right.
And it's not that I did it here. I got a pleasure out of seeing guys, okay, here, help this guy, help that guy. So
sure.
Great.
My parents were from Red Hook, Brooklyn, and I'm from. Then they bought a home in Larry's neighborhood in Bensonhurst. But in Red Hook, there was an Italian gangster. He passed away years ago now, named Frankie Martin or Frankie Barranca. And according to my father, he never did any time or anything like that. And my father said he would always drive a hunk of junk. He never moved out of the neighborhood. He always stayed in the same apartment. He never wore fancy clothes. He never hung out at the social clubs. And that was completely by design. It's got to be really difficult when you're making so much money that you don't buy the Cadillac, that you don't buy the Mercedes, that you're not buying the Rolex. I mean, it seems like you're a different type of man, but new money usually does that to people.
But I didn't come from new money.
That's where you go. That answers the question. All right, very cool, very cool. I have a couple of just I guess intellectual questions, you could say. For some reason, when the Jews came over, their length of poverty, if you will, for lack of a better term, was maybe 1 or 2 generations, and then they really got well with education, business, so on and so forth. Whereas the Italians, maybe up until today, still a small percentage of them are still thugs. They're still in the street. They're operating on a very small scale now. But what made the difference? Why were the Jews so good at escalating their lifestyle into business and legitimate businesses, and the Italians always stayed on the street?
So I think it's cultural. First of all, the Jew is known as the people of the book.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis on education, as I explained to you about myself, a great emphasis on education. The same thing goes as far as my kids are concerned. One, they went off in different directions. One is a rabbi, who's I explained is a brilliant scholar of Jewish law, which is very intricate, very, very, very difficult, and he masters it. And the other one is an interventional X-ray technician. So we put an emphasis on medicine, but you have today within the Italian community the same emphasis on education. Kids are getting better education. However, there is still that element within the Southern Italian mentality. All right. By the way, the word of reference for Southern Italian is mezzogiorno. Did you know that, John?
Yes,
mezzogiorno means midday.
Right.
Okay, midday, because the sun is so strong in southern Italy at midday, so they refer to Apulia and Bari and Calabria and Sicily and so forth, Napoli. They refer to it as mezzogiorno. So the mentality of the Southern Italian is cultural, that there's that the men of nobility. Are we noble men? Or are we not noble men? Mm-hmm. This has been handed down from generation to generation. So it carries forth here in the United States. There's a certain the rules and regulations within Cosa Nostra. These are carried forward traditions that go back centuries. The southern part of Italy was occupied from going all the way back to time immemorial, from the time of the Greeks. Long before the time of the Greeks, but there always was this constant conquest. We had the Mamelukes, we had the Arabs, we had the French, we had the Spanish, all dominated at a certain point the Italian of southern Italy. So the defense mechanism that was created to fight the invaders and the occupiers was the Cosa Nostra, was the mafia. And this is cultural. Whereas the Jews were concerned, when they came to the United States, though the striving for education in order to be able to make money, all right, to come out of poverty. So the mob, the Jewish mob, it never intended to raise their kids to become. They're gonna make their bones, and they're gonna get their button, and they're gonna become a member of the secret society.
Right.
It's just go to school, go to university, and learn how to become a lawyer, to become a doctor, a professor, a teacher, a scientist, research medicine, and so forth. Where the emphasis was on getting an education in order to better your lives. Now, the Italian, culturally, I don't have to tell you, but if you go to neighborhoods, you still have that we're going to go to the club tonight. We're going to go play cards. We're going to play machines. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Have an espresso coffee, and make the conversation of who's who, who's what, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not criticizing it because I admire it. And to a great extent, I admire it because, okay, you have a rising tide of anti-Semitism today in the United States, right? People, anti-Semites, they attack Jews in Jewish neighborhoods, right? Mm. Did you ever hear of anybody going into an Italian neighborhood and saying the same thing, vile remarks about Italians that they say about Jews? They say it about Jews with impunity. Could you imagine somebody saying the same thing in an Italian? Go to Bensonhurst, or the old Bensonhurst.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to Staten Island and start mouthing off the same vile remarks that were made to the Jews in the Jewish neighborhood. Mm-hmm. The guy would be part of Osobuco tomorrow's lunch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I grew up in the same neighborhood as Larry.
So there, in that sense, I have friends from Nutley, New Jersey, Nutley, Belleville, so forth, old school Italians. Yeah. They tried to pull down the Columbus statue.
Yes, I remember that.
Those old timers wouldn't let that happen. All right. They went out there. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that unity. I love that physical force. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Jews, they move to the suburbs. Let's stay a little bit away from it. We'll pay the police force and so forth and so.
Right.
So there is something positive. Recognize when I was a young man, 1967, we had the riots in Newark, New Jersey. Anthony Imperiale. I don't know if you ever heard that name. But
no, I didn't.
No blacks were going up Bloomfield Avenue in Newark. Right. There were guys waiting with tanks. And the blacks knew that if they're rioting, that's one area. But they went to the southern part of Newark, all right, to the South Ward, because that was the Jewish neighborhood. There was no defiance. There's no resistance.
Okay.
We had the New Jersey National Guard come in and protect us, but we didn't have guys on the roof. We didn't have threat, or an organization to respond to it. So there's something to say and very positive about that mentality. Right?
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna one last question, and then I'm gonna let you go, Mr. Sugarman, and it's on that very topic, and I agree with you. There's something about a man and his instinct to protect what is his, and it goes back to the dawn of time. I fully agree with you, but I don't see that in today's society much. Today's society seems to be easily swayed and easily forced into an agenda that most people don't want, and they kind of throw their hands up, like, let's say the trans community entering into
it's hard sports. To find it. I know where you're going with this, John.
Okay.
It's hard to find a liberal within the Italian community.
Right.
Thank God.
No,
okay?
Right, good.
Whereas 80% of my people, all right, 80% of my people, frankly, suffer from a mental illness called cranium anal inversion. You know what that means? Their heads are up their asses.
No, well, what I was trying to get at was you had told a story on Valuetainment, which was a fascinating story. During pre-World War II, you had a group of Jews that were on call, and if there was a Nazi rally,
it's hard to see that generation today. Although I'm glad you brought it up. I am working with a couple of young guys, a couple of tough kids that want to form a defense movement in order to fight anti-Semitism throughout the entire United States, hoping that if we do a remarkable job, we will be able to inspire Jews to get off their asses and start taking pride in protecting college campuses today, John.
Exactly.
A
Right.
ground for the worst form of ideology and philosophy that you can possibly imagine. And a terrible breeding ground for extreme Jew hatred. Right? So I'm working with the counseling. The old man is counseling these young kids in terms of what was done 100 years ago, 90 years ago, and let's do it again and do it in an intelligent fashion.
Well, I'm very, very glad to hear that, sir, because it really bothers me as a man that somebody could just come in to the Board of Education or into a neighborhood or some district of education and say, hey, we're going to have drag queen story time now, and your kids are 6 and 7 years old, and there's no pushback. And as a man internally, I can't understand it. Why wouldn't there be any pushback? And this should be across the board. It should be bipartisan issue where it's like, stay away from my children.
So that for sure is within the Orthodox Jewish world, you have an affinity with the normal mentality. I mean, that stands for God, country, nation, principles, biblical values, Judeo-Christian values, and so forth. Of course, thank God. But unfortunately, our 80% Jews are in a mystery to understand, and they support, they accept. There's just no answer for it. We intellectualize on it all the time, trying to figure out why, how, what, when, and where. But it's a terrible mystery. And the truth of the matter is that generation of 80%, 75% of their kids are marrying outside the religion. And they will, when the generation removed from today, there will be no liberal Jews left in the United States, simply by virtue of the fact that they will have integrated and assimilated and evaporated. Thank God.
Okay.
I won't miss them.
Yeah. So give everybody a plug on your book. I did not get a chance to buy it, but I will. What is the book that you read?
It's on Amazon. It's called The Chronicles of the Last Jewish Gangster, from Meyer, which of course referred to Meyer Lansky, to Myron, M-Y-R-O-N. Okay. And also there's a documentary about me. It's on Amazon Prime. It's $9.99. I don't promote any of this stuff. If people are interested in it, let them go find it, let them buy it, let them read it, get educated about it, and so forth. But as you can see, John, I politically am hard right of center in everything. All right?
I completely understand why.
I believe as this country is getting further and further screwed up, it's forcing people like myself to become even more hard right in order to do everything within our power to balance it. Incidentally, you ask great questions. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you, sir.
This is a great discussion. I took a lot of pride in it. All right.
Thank you, sir, very much. I will make sure that the link for your book is in the description area. And do you remember what the documentary on Amazon Prime is called?
The Last Man Standing.
Last Man Standing. Okay.
The last.
Okay, great. Mr. Sugarman,
John, is that I am the last man. They said the last gangster. Everybody said, well, there's plenty of Jewish gangsters, the guys. So yes, there are. I am the last of the era of the 19th century.
I see.
I'm sorry, of the 20th century, meaning from 1900 going forward. Right. I'm the second generation of that world. I'm 85 years of age.
Wow.
When I go, there's nobody left to tell the story. You helped tell the story tonight. All right.
Thank you, sir. Much love and much respect. God, always, it was an honor, sir.
Much love and respect, and all the best to you, son. All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, now.